Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? Today we're going to untangle some of the complexities of East Asian history.
Yeah, specifically, we'll be looking at a really dynamic period from the 10th to the 14th centuries.
And joining me to help navigate this fascinating era, we have an expert in all things East Asia during this period.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's set the stage. Imagine East Asia in the 10th century. Big picture, what's going on?
Well, the Tang dynasty, a major force in China, had just collapsed.
Ah, okay. Classic power vacuum situation.
Right, and like we see throughout history, when one power falls, others rise to fill the void.
So who are the new players stepping into the spotlight?
Well, up in Korea, we see the emergence of the Goryeo Kingdom. They're known for their beautiful Celadon pottery.
Oh, I've seen pictures of that. It's stunning.
It was, and more than just art, they used it as a diplomatic tool, traded all the way to the Middle East.
Wow, so a cultural artifact becomes this thread connecting such different worlds.
Exactly. Then down south, you have the Viet establishing itself. They were all about consolidating their independence from China.
So forging their own path. What about other areas?
The Dali Kingdom was flourishing in Yunnan. They were known for their diverse mix of cultures.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And were there any other contenders for power?
Oh yeah, the Liao dynasty up in Mongolia, they were a force to be reckoned with.
So we've got all these new kingdoms jostling for position. What about China itself? How are they handling all this?
Well, in 960, a general named Zhao Guanyin establishes the Song dynasty.
The Song dynasty, yeah. They were a major force, right?
They were. Initially, they were pretty successful in unifying much of China, but they faced some serious challenges.
Like what?
Internal struggles, economic woes, and external pressures.
Okay, so a whole mixed bag of problems. How did they try to address these issues?
One key figure was Wang Anshi, a chancellor who implemented these sweeping reforms.
Oh yeah, Wang Anshi. A pretty controversial figure, wasn't he?
He was. He was trying to strengthen the state and address those economic issues.
What kind of reforms did he put in place?
One example is the Junshu law, which regulated transportation and storage to stabilize prices of essential goods.
Interesting. So like an early form of government intervention in the market.
You could say that. It was a way to ensure the smooth flow of goods and prevent price spikes. Then you had the Qingmiao law.
What'd that one do?
That one aimed to help peasant farmers by providing loans at low interest rates.
So kind of like a financial safety net for farmers during tough times.
Exactly. These loans were designed to help them during planting season and prevent them from falling into debt.
Makes sense. Were there any other key reforms?
The Shi law was meant to regulate trade and offer support to merchants.
So trying to boost the economy from multiple angles. Were these reforms successful?
Well, some aspects were, but they also caused a lot of division and debate.
Ah, the age-old struggle of government intervention. Good intentions, but sometimes unintended consequences.
Right. And to make matters worse, the Song dynasty was facing increasing pressure from the north.
You're talking about the Jin dynasty. Right?
Yep. They were formed by the Jurchens, a nomadic group with a really effective military structure.
I remember reading about them. They had this system called the Mengen Yuk, right?
That's right. Think of it like a highly organized, adaptable fighting force.
So a well-oiled military machine.
Pretty much. And they ended up being a major threat to the Song dynasty.
How did the Song fare against this new threat?
Well, it wasn't pretty. The northern Song dynasty fell to the Jin in 1127.
Wow. So a major turning point in Chinese history. What happened to the Song after that?
The Song court fled south and established the southern Song dynasty in Linnan.
Okay, so a new chapter for the Song dynasty. But with all this political turmoil, I imagine there wasn't much room for cultural development.
You'd think so, but surprisingly, the Song dynasty actually experienced a bit of a cultural golden age.
Really? Even with everything else going on?
Yeah, it's kind of like finding beauty in unexpected places. Even amidst the chaos, there's this flourishing of art, philosophy, and literature.
Wow, that's fascinating. So what were some of the key cultural highlights of this period?
One big development was the rise of Song Confucianism. A philosopher named Zhu Dunyi was a key figure.
Zhu Dunyu. And what was so special about his ideas?
He basically sought to revitalize Confucian thought, integrating ideas from Buddhism and Taoism.
Oh, interesting. So a blending of different philosophical traditions.
Right. It was a way to adapt Confucianism to the changing times.
And were there any other important thinkers who contributed to this new wave of Confucianism?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Zhu Xi, a really influential figure, built upon Zhu Dunyi's work and emphasized self-cultivation and social responsibility.
So trying to apply these philosophical ideas to the real world.
Exactly. His teachings ended up having a huge and lasting impact on East Asian thought.
Wow, that's quite a legacy. Were there any other figures who left their mark on this era?
We can't forget about Sima Guang, a historian who compiled this massive work of Chinese history.
The Zizi Tongjian, right?
That's the one. It's basically a chronicle of Chinese history presented in chronological order.
So like a comprehensive guide to the past.
Yeah, and it was meant to help rulers learn from the successes and failures of those who came before them.
That's a pretty valuable resource, especially in such turbulent times.
It was. It provided a framework for understanding the present through the lens of the past.
Okay, so we've covered the rise of new kingdoms, the Song dynasty's challenges and cultural achievements. But there's one more major player we need to talk about. The one who's going to really shake things up. The Mongols.
Ah, yes, the Mongols, often depicted as this sudden, unstoppable force. But their emergence was part of a long history of nomadic groups impacting East Asia.
Right, like the Scythians and the Xiongnu who gave the Han dynasty a run for their money.
Exactly. The Mongols were, in a sense, heirs to that legacy. Their ancestors included the Gukturks and the Uyghurs.
So they were building on a long tradition of nomadic power. Were there any specific historical events that influenced their rise?
One key event was the Battle of Talas River in 751 AD.
Oh yeah, I remember reading about that. Wasn't that a clash between the Abbasid Caliphate and the Tang dynasty?
That's right. The Abbasid victory really shifted the balance of power in Central Asia. It halted the Tang's westward expansion and opened the door for Islam to spread in the region.
Which would later influence the Mongols. So the Battle of Talas River was kind of a domino effect, setting the stage for future events.
Exactly. And from that complex mix of cultures, conflicts, and historical turning points, the Mongols emerged.
So the scene is set. We've got these powerful new kingdoms, the Song dynasty trying to hold on, and the Mongols waiting in the wings. But how did these Mongol tribes go from scattered groups to a unified force ready to conquer?
That's where a man named Temujin, better known as Genghis Khan, enters the picture.
Genghis Khan, a name that echoes through history. Didn't he unify the Mongol tribes in 1206?
He did, and that marked the birth of the Mongol Empire, one of the largest empires the world has ever seen.
And one that would change the course of history. But we'll have to save that story for next time.
So Genghis Khan, he really set the stage, but his successors had quite the task ahead of him.
Yeah, trying to maintain an empire that massive, stretching all the way from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe.
It was unprecedented. So after Genghis Khan's death, his son Ögedei Khan took the reins.
The Ögedei Khan. And did he continue expanding the empire?
He did. The Mongol armies pushed further into China, into Persia, and even deeper into Europe.
Wow, that's impressive. Who led these campaigns?
One of the key figures was Batu Khan, Genghis Khan's grandson.
Batu Khan, right. I think I've heard that name before. Wasn't he involved in some of those major clashes with European forces?
He was. He led that westward expansion into Europe, conquering territory and engaging in some pretty legendary battles.
Like which ones? Any specific battles stand out?
One that really stands out is the Battle of Lednica in 1241.
The Battle of Lednica. Okay, and who were the Mongols up against in that one?
The Mongols faced a combined force of Polish and German troops.
And what was the outcome?
A decisive Mongol victory. It really sent a message about their military power.
I bet it did. So the Mongols are conquering vast territories, but their motivations weren't just about military dominance, right?
Right. They were also driven by a desire for wealth, for resources, and for control of those vital trade routes that crisscrossed Eurasia.
Of course, the Silk Road. Control over those trade routes would mean immense economic power.
Exactly. And speaking of economic and symbolic significance, one key target was Baghdad.
Baghdad, the heart of the Islamic world at the time.
Exactly. And in 1258, Hulagu Khan, another grandson of Genghis Khan, led the siege and conquest of Baghdad.
Wow. The fall of Baghdad, that must have been a huge turning point.
It was. Baghdad was this flourishing center of learning, culture, and trade. Its fall marked the end of the Abbasid Caliphate, a dynasty that had ruled the Middle East for centuries.
So at this point, the Mongol Empire is truly vast. But empires that grow too quickly and too large often face internal challenges.
That's true. After Möngke Khan's death in 1259, things start to change.
Möngke Khan. That name doesn't sound familiar.
He was another one of Genghis Khan's grandsons. And after he died, internal disputes and power struggles began to fracture the empire.
So cracks are starting to appear in this seemingly invincible empire.
Right. And eventually it splits into several independent khanates.
So basically, A massive empire breaks down into smaller, more manageable, but also potentially more volatile entities.
Exactly. You had the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, the Golden Horde in southern Russia, and the Ilkhanate in Persia.
So the Mongol Empire, as a single entity, is no more. What about China? Did the Mongols maintain their hold there?
In China, you have the rise of Kublai Khan, yet another grandson of Genghis Khan.
Seems like Genghis Khan had quite a few grandsons who made their mark on history.
He did, and Kublai Khan was no exception. He established the Yuan dynasty in 1271, making Dadu, modern-day Beijing, his capital.
Dadu, modern-day Beijing. Wow, that's a pretty significant choice for a capital.
It was, and Kublai Khan was ambitious. He finally achieved what his predecessors couldn't, the conquest of the southern Song dynasty.
So under Kublai Khan, all of China was unified under Mongol rule.
Precisely. In 1279, he brought an end to centuries of division in China. It was the start of a new era.
And what kind of ruler was Kublai Khan? Did he maintain the Mongol traditions or try to adapt to Chinese customs?
He did a bit of both. He adopted some Chinese customs and administrative practices, but also held on to those Mongol nomadic traditions.
So a balancing act,
Mm-hmm.
trying to blend different cultures and systems of governance.
He was trying to forge a new path, but he wasn't without his challenges.
What kind of challenges did he face?
His attempts to conquer Vietnam proved unsuccessful.
Really? So even the mighty Mongols had their limits. Who stopped them in Vietnam?
The Tran dynasty put up a fierce resistance and repelled those Mongol invasions.
Wow, those victories must be pretty significant in Vietnamese history.
They are, celebrated as moments of resilience and defiance.
So Kublai Khan's reign wasn't just about expansion and conquest. It was also about managing this vast, diverse empire. How did he govern such a complex mix of people?
He implemented a hierarchical system, with Mongols and other nomadic groups at the top.
Okay, so a system that clearly favored the Mongols. And who came after them in this hierarchy?
Next came the Simu people, Central Asians and West Asians.
The Simu people. What role did they play in the Yuan dynasty?
They were pretty essential. Many were merchants, artisans, skilled professionals. They were really important in administration, trade, and cultural life.
So they helped connect the Yuan dynasty to the wider world.
Exactly. They facilitated trade along the Silk Road, introduced new technologies, and even brought new artistic styles.
So a lot of cultural exchange happening during this period. But I imagine this hierarchical system probably created some tension as well.
It did. While initially effective, it eventually led to resentment among the native Chinese population.
Who felt marginalized under Mongol rule.
Right. And those simmering tensions eventually contributed to the Yuan dynasty's decline and collapse in 1368.
Another reminder that even the most powerful empires can be brought down from within.
It's a common theme throughout history. Internal divisions and resentment can be just as destructive as any external force.
We've talked a lot about conquests and empires. But this era was also about something else. A flourishing of cultural exchange, a result of all these interactions and movements across Eurasia.
It's true. The Mongol Empire, even though it was built on conquest, it inadvertently created these connections between East and West.
Right. Goods, ideas, technologies, even religious beliefs were flowing across these vast networks.
It's quite ironic when you think about it. This empire built on force ends up facilitating this incredible exchange of ideas and culture. It's this unexpected consequence of conquest.
So who are some of the key figures involved in this exchange?
Well, there were individuals like Giovanni da Pian del Carpine and William of Rubruck, who traveled to the Mongol court as papal envoys.
Papal envoys all the way to the Mongol court. That's a long journey.
It was. They carried messages from the Pope and observed the workings of this vast empire. Think of them as early diplomats, trying to build bridges between these very different worlds.
Fascinating. And I'm guessing they weren't the only ones making these incredible journeys.
Oh, definitely not. We can't forget about the merchants and travelers who braved the Silk Road, venturing into the heart of the Mongol Empire and beyond.
It was a dangerous, but also incredibly rewarding journey.
It was. One of the most famous travelers from this period was Marco Polo, the Venetian merchant.
Marco Polo, everyone's heard of him. Didn't he spend years living in Kublai Khan's court?
He did, 17 years to be exact. And his book, Travels, gives us this amazing glimpse into the Mongol world.
It's like a window into a lost world.
It is. He describes the Mongol court, the postal system, the paper currency, the diversity of cultures. It's an incredible testament to the interconnectedness of the world even back then.
A 13th century travelogue. That's so cool. Were there any other notable travelers who ventured into the Mongol Empire?
We also have John of Montecorvino, a Franciscan missionary who made his way to Dadu, Kublai Khan's capital.
A missionary in the Mongol court. What was his mission?
He was determined to spread Christianity. He even established a small Christian community in the heart of the empire.
Wow, talk about a leap of faith. Traveling to a completely different culture with the goal of sharing your beliefs? That's incredible.
It really shows the power of belief and the human drive to connect with others, even across vast cultural divides.
And were there any travelers who came from the other direction, from the Islamic world to the Mongol Empire?
Absolutely. Ibn Battuta, a Moroccan scholar and explorer, traveled extensively throughout the Islamic world, and his travels included Yuan China.
Ibn Battuta. His journeys were legendary. Didn't he write about his experiences?
He did. His book, The Rihla, meaning journey, offers a fascinating account of daily life, customs, and the intellectual climate of the places he visited.
So another window into this interconnected world.
Exactly. His writings show the diversity and interconnectedness of the 14th century world. From bustling cities to remote villages, he captures the richness of human experience across cultures.
It's incredible to think about all these individuals traversing these vast distances, crossing cultural boundaries, sharing ideas. It really highlights how the Mongol Empire, unintentionally, brought the world closer together.
It's a testament to the enduring human desire to connect, to explore, and to exchange ideas, even amidst conflict and upheaval.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. The rise and fall of empires, the clash of cultures, the spread of ideas. But what about the lasting impact of all this? How did this period, from the 10th to the 14th centuries, actually shape the world we live in today?
That's the big question, isn't it? The legacies of this era are multifaceted. They're woven into the political landscapes, the cultural expressions, even the technologies we use today. It's true, those lasting impacts. Sometimes it's not about these big dramatic events, but those quiet, those subtle continuities that run through history.
Right, we get caught up in those major shifts, but it's the undercurrents, the culture, those traditions. That's what really shapes a society's identity.
Think about Confucianism. It's been central to East Asian thought for centuries.
Yeah, even with Buddhism and Taoism becoming popular during the Song dynasty, those Confucian values, they persisted.
Exactly. They continued to shape social norms, political systems, even artistic expression. It's like this, like a tree with deep roots.
Strong foundation. It keeps growing, branching out, even as everything around it changes.
And it's not just an abstract thing either. It's all around us. Just look at the Forbidden City in Beijing.
Ah, yeah. An architectural marvel.
Right. Built on the foundations laid by Kublai Khan's Yuan dynasty. You see this blend of Chinese and Mongol styles.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder of how the past literally shapes the present.
It's like having this, secret decoder ring to unlock the hidden stories behind the places we visit, the traditions we see.
And the art we admire.
Speaking of art, look at the popularity of Korean dramas, K-pop.
Oh, yeah, huge phenomenon.
It reflects that cultural vibrancy, the artistic innovation we saw back in the Goryeo period. There's Celadon pottery, Buddhist art.
It's amazing to think those traditions, that creative energy, are still going strong centuries later.
It's fascinating, right? Like this backstage pass to how culture evolves, ideas passed down, transformed.
And that's what makes history so captivating.
Yeah.
You get this deeper understanding, this appreciation for how complex and interconnected everything is.
Yeah, we're all part of this bigger story.
And learning about the past, well, it helps us understand who we are, where we came from, and maybe even where we're going.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's time to wrap up our deep dive into this era of East Asian history.
But before we go, let's take a moment to appreciate everything we've covered. The rise and fall of those dynasties, the cultural clashes, the spread of ideas.
We've journeyed from those bustling Song dynasty cities to the vast steppes of the Mongol Empire.
Meeting all sorts of fascinating people along the way, witnessing these transformative events. It's been quite a ride.
It has, and hopefully it sparks some curiosity, maybe challenged some assumptions, giving you a new perspective.
Because as we've seen, history isn't just about dates and facts in a textbook.
It's a living thing. It shapes who we are, where we come from, the possibilities for the future.
So, to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep diving deeper into those mysteries of the past.
Because the journey through history, well, it's full of surprises, insights, connections that can help us understand our present and inspire our future.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep those historical gears turning.